I've never thought too much about what's good or bad for college basketball. Not that it doesn't matter to me, because of course I want what's good for college basketball on some level. But something that is more important to me is what's right or wrong. I don't think of about what's good or bad. I think of it from the perspective of what's right and what's wrong, what's fair and what's unfair. And you will never convince me, no matter how hard you try or how much you cuss or how angry you get, that it is right for amateur student athletes to be restricted in any sort of way when it comes to changing schools and playing sports at those schools. It has never been a reality for most student athletes. I think sometimes people don't understand that. This is not a soccer thing. This is not a track thing. If you play soccer at Wisconsin and you decide you want to play with soccer at Marquette the next season, you can do that. And you've always been able to do that. This has been limited to a very small number of sports in men's and women's sides. And finally, in this forever push for player empowerment, we got to a place where the people who had the power to change this finally acknowledged it is not fair, it is not right to hold basketball players to standards that we don't hold soccer players to. Like, it never made any sense to any sensible person that you could have a golfer and a football player live in the same dorm, go to the same classes at the same school, and if one of them wanted to transfer, that person could play immediately, and if the other one wanted to transfer, that person would have to sit out. We shouldn't be holding student athletes to different standards. And so now here we are. And are there unintended consequences to that rule change? Yeah, sure. But for me, everything starts and stops with what is right. What is right by the student athlete. And allowing them to transfer without penalty was always the right thing. And when you combine it with name, image, and likeness coming in at the exact same time, it is a shot to the system. There's no getting around it.
Yes.
But it's a better system. I'll just put it this way, and then you can take it. The system we have now is imperfect, but it's better. And more than that, it's more fair. It's more right. And when it comes to this kind of stuff, I'm always going to land on the side of what's right.
It also comes with still plenty of risk. That's the point I made on Monday. Tyrese Hunter isn't guaranteed to be any better next season wherever he plays than where he was at Iowa State. I mean, yeah, he is an elite. To me, he's like a top 25 defender in the country, if not better than that, and is going to make whatever team he goes to better on that end of the floor. He has more growing to do offensively. I think he will eventually be drafted into the NBA. He's not quite there yet overall, but I think he will be drafted and make the NBA eventually there. So if you're an Iowa State fan, I get it. You had an unexpectedly good season. He was your best player, and now he's deciding to go somewhere else, and you're chapped over the idea that he's going to go into the portal because maybe name, image, and likeness is going to lure him away from Iowa State. Well, I'm sorry. That's just the breaks. It just is. We should not be restricting, particularly in this environment, where players can go. How about this? Completely unrelated situation, but I'm going to do a story on this, I think, for Wednesday or Tuesday, a quick one for CBS. Do you realize that there are still a couple of conferences? I didn't realize this until I was alerted to a player at, you ready for this? Campbell.
The Fighting Camel?
Fighting Camel.
A Fighting Camel?
A fighting camel that no longer seeks to be a fighting camel. Yeah, he's had a good run, but he's out. So Messiah Thompson is his name. Plays at Campbell. That's in the Big South. The Big South still doesn't let you transfer in league and play for immediate eligibility. You still have to sit a year. And when I learned this, I thought, there's no way this is true. And yet it is. You still, 8 years ago, this was the stuff that we were podcasting about, writing columns about. Bo Ryan was getting in hot water over this kind of stuff where, you can't leave inside your own league and have eligibility, let alone play a year. So there are still, for as much progress as we are making in terms of player empowerment, there are still some leagues I mean, the idea that the Big South is saying you can't transfer in league and have immediate eligibility to me is insane, especially with a fighting camel. How dare they? How dare they?
How do you restrict? How do you look yourself in the mirror after restricting a fighting camel?
I have no idea. I'm going to talk with the league. I plan and hope to talk with the league commissioner about this exact topic later on Tuesday.
Do you realize do you realize you're restricting a fighting camel? And have you ever seen a fighting camel backed into a corner? It's not pretty. Go to YouTube, sir. It's not. I did about a month ago watch an entire camel fight.
I know you did.
I was just up late at night. I was
I know this is a regular thing with you.
Yeah. I just caught myself like it's like 1 a.m, can't sleep, just sitting up watching camels fight on YouTube.
Yeah,
it's wild the way they fight. I mean, it's wild.
Yeah, I'm aware. I'm glad we hit our yearly quota on camel fighting, by the way. I'm glad I could get that in, but I'll have that later in the week.
One other point I wanted to make is like, because you see all this stuff, and it's like, I was joking earlier about the Iowa State fan talking about if my school just going to be a feeder system for the Blue Bloods, why should I even watch? Well, your school's not just going to be a feeder system for the Blue Bloods.
That's correct.
Yeah, no school is just going to be that. Let's go back to TJ Otzelberger for a second. Before he was the coach at Iowa State, he was the coach at UNLV. Before that, he was a Jackrabbit. And they had Mike Daum. And Mike Daum, I believe, could have been a graduate transfer his final year of college. And I remember talking to TJ about it at the time, and he was like, listen, I've got a relationship with Mike. I think he's going to stay, and he ultimately did. But he's like, if Kansas comes and says, do you want to come be a Jayhawk? Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, how could I be upset that he might take that opportunity? And I don't know if TJ's perspective has changed over the years, but at one point that was his perspective. And that makes the most sense to me. One of the, like, for every Tyrese Hunter who decides I can now do something that I think, not know, but think is bigger and better than Iowa State, there's going to be somebody who decides they want to stay right where they're at. And by the way, the idea that the Kentuckys and the Texases and the Dukes are just going to buy all the players, first off, buying all the players doesn't always lead to the best teams. I mean, Texas really did well in the transfer portal last offseason.
People thought Texas did the best.
Right. And did you watch Texas this season? They were just like, they were good.
Yeah.
But just good. There's nothing special about it. They were just good. The idea that you're just going to be able to buy, you're not going to just be able to buy the championship teams. I mean, it will happen sometimes, but like, it's not foolproof. There are going to be players who decide they don't want to leave places like Iowa State, even if places like Kentucky and North Carolina and Duke want them. All right. So the idea that you can't possibly keep your players, that's just not true. It will be impossible for you to keep some people, but the idea that you won't be able to keep anybody you want to keep if the big boys come calling, that's not real life. Also, it is true that the Kentuckys and the Carolinas theoretically will have more money than anybody else. But like every power conference school's got rich boosters. Like every power conference school, there's not a power conference school that doesn't have multi-millionaire boosters who have tons of money to throw around. So if I don't care what school you are, Iowa State, Iowa, Penn State, it doesn't matter. If you've got boosters who want to create name, image, and likeness opportunities that convince players you can make as much money here as you can make anywhere, that's available to you. One of the things I think is interesting is the way this stuff could theoretically work. Do you realize, like, if you are a women's soccer fan, diehard at Southern Miss, and also have like $100 million, you could just decide I'm going to try to create the best women's soccer program in the country and just make it known that I'm going to create name, image, and likeness opportunities for the best high school women's soccer prospects in the country, and suddenly you're Southern Miss with one of the best women's soccer teams. Like, this is available to everybody.
Yes. There's uncertainty surrounding this exact issue, and I haven't gotten to that, but there's a story that Stuart Mandel wrote for The Athletic that published on Tuesday about this whole idea of NIL offers and contracts for high school players coming into college. And there's like this This is a whole separate deal altogether, GP. But to your point, right now as it stands, that's accurate. And the whole thing is like, is there any way to untangle that not going forward, or will it be a reality? It will be interesting to see how the NCAA even attempts to address that part of this, which was always a major concern it had going forward.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you're worried that you'll never be able to keep a player again, that's just not true. You know, for every guy you lose, there's going to be a guy you keep, and maybe twice as many. So I think I understand how you might reach that conclusion if you're a fan of a school that just lost your best player, you know, presumably to a bigger school somewhere. But the idea that it's going to be impossible for the Iowa States to keep guys, that's not true. You know, the Tyrese Hunter story got a lot of attention this week. There's another story that got less attention. And I just bring it up because it illustrates how this stuff can work. I don't want to say that there shouldn't be any loyalty in the sport, or that there isn't. But I do think we've reached the point where you shouldn't expect it. You know, people are going to do what's best for them.
Mm-hmm.
And this cuts both ways. Tyrese Hunter decided it was best for him to leave Iowa State. You know, we'll see if he's right. I don't know if you saw this, but Tyler Harris announced that he's entering the transfer portal out of Memphis, and also announced he didn't want to, that he was told by Penny Hardaway it's time to move on. And this is a Memphis product who signed with Penny out of high school, who then left to go to Iowa State, and then came back to Memphis. And this is a wild fact: led the team in scoring more often than any other player this season, more often than Jalen Duren, more often than DeAndre Williams, Lester Quinones. And if you take Tyler Harris at his word, or his mother at her word, because she posted on Facebook about it, Tyler Harris was told, you don't have a place at Memphis anymore. Now, does that make Penny Hardaway a bad guy, like Tyrese Hunter is a bad guy? Or is that just like everybody's doing what's best for them, or what they at least believe is best for them? And that's where we're at. And some people will make good decisions, and some people will make bad decisions. But it's up to everybody at this point to make whatever decision you want to make. And so this is going to cut both ways, and that's an example of it cutting both ways. And one of the things Gottlieb brought up with you.
We're going back to that, huh?
Well, I do think it's an important note, because a lot of people bring this up, or at least he brings this up a lot. You know, because the counter to it's BS that Tyrese Hunter is just bailing on Iowa State after 1 year. The counter to that is, well, like, coaches bail on places all the time. Like, again, TJ Otzelberger's at his third head coaching job. Once upon a time, he had the South Dakota State job, and then UNLV wanted to hire him, and he said, I'll do that. And then Iowa State wanted to hire him, and he said, well, I'll do that. You know, I don't want to say every time TJ's got a better opportunity he's left, but like, he's done it at least twice. And so then Doug will counter with, yeah, but coaches have buyouts. You know, coaches have buyouts. So there is a restriction in there. And, you know, they have to pay a price to get out of their contract, whereas Tyrese Hunter doesn't have to do anything except announce that he's leaving. And I know that's an easy thing to point to, but it's come on. Coaches have the number of times coaches actually don't take a job that they want because of a quote buyout is very, very small. I'm not saying it never is an actual restriction, but it is rarely an actual restriction. And either way, the reason coaches have buyouts in their contracts is because they're allowed to negotiate the terms of their commitment to a school. If you want to create a system where student athletes can negotiate the terms of their commitment to a school, create that system. I'll vote for it. You know,
I believe the common parlance on social media is, but you're not ready to have that conversation.
Yeah, if you want to create a system where student athletes are allowed to negotiate the terms of their commitment to a school the way coaches are, I am happy to create that system. And everybody can negotiate the own terms. Some people say, I'll stay here for 2 years just for a scholarship and a cost of attendance stipend. And somebody else might say, I'll stay here for 1 year, but it's going to cost you $3 million. And somebody else might say, I'll stay here for 4 years, just pay for my. If you want to create that system and let student athletes negotiate the terms of their commitment to a school the way coaches are allowed to negotiate the terms of their commitments, to create that system, I think it would be fabulous. As it is, student athletes are not allowed to do that. And because they're not allowed to do that, I don't think you should be allowed to restrict them. And the powers that be finally, after all these years, agreed and created the system that we have now. And I'm not pretending that it's not chaotic. I'm not pretending that it doesn't make coaches' jobs more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just telling you it's the right and fair thing to do. So I'm for it.